everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall too everywhere. How are you? Happy spring, everybody. I apologize for my gritchy voice. We've got all kinds of allergies blowing around here in Montana. And of course, as we go into further in the spring, I just get to sound like Marge Simpson more and more. It's so fun. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here with everybody today. And, you know, there's so much going on in the world. I'm kind of cutting this podcast in. We have a couple in post-production right now that are going to go up here. But I'm cutting this podcast in front of the line because it's about the situation with Ukraine and everything that we're seeing over there with Russia and all the things. And literally, my inbox has been just blown up with people wondering, what's happening with Putin? What's going on? What can we expect? You know, I thought the Russians were going to rein Putin in by now and all the things. So I'm shoehorning in this particular podcast here as the others come out of post-production, just because I think it's important to get out there and talk about what's happening. And so if we go back almost 2 months and we look at the situation with Ukraine and with Russia, and the ethers were showing us that the Russians were really going to try to handle Vladimir Putin and see if they could get him reined in, because that's kind of what Russia does, right? They don't ever admit they did anything wrong, but then they kind of handle it behind the scenes and say, oh, Vladimir, he fell down and cracked skull in bathroom. That was the worst Russian accent in the history of mankind. But anyway, usually they kind of handle it on their own. And this is a psychic peek, okay, at what's going on in the Kremlin, in Russia, what's going on behind the scenes. So that's where this information is coming from, just to be very clear. And one of the things I've been looking into is why the heck the Russians haven't put more of a stop to what Putin was doing. Because that was something I saw right out the gate, is that they would let Vlad do his thing for a little while. And if it got too crazy, they were going to rein it in. And if they had to rein him in, meaning like he takes a vodka at night, takes many vodkas at night, I'm seeing. But he takes a vodka at night and maybe he just goes night-night for a very long time, like forever, because of something they put in the vodka. Yeah, I was looking at, if you want to call it extra safeguards for crazy, and Russia has a lot of that. You know, Russia as a country is such a gorgeous, fascinating, art-filled, science-filled, history-filled, architecturally filled place. And it's really just struggled from, the tyranny of the czars on. And it's just kind of wobbled over there. And if you think about the Russian landmass, gang, I mean, you can put like 2.5 United Stateses inside of Russia. Russia is humongous. I don't think we understand how big Russia is. And a lot of Russia is landlocked. You know, there's some port areas and some coastlines and whatnot. But really, where you've got a lot of coast, it's so freaking cold up there, that it's just... that's difficult. So Russia is a fascinating place. And when you're looking at Vladimir Putin, what you're seeing is somebody who, I was looking at this psychically, and it's such a dumb word, but I don't have a better word, through the ethers, whatever, talking to the angels about it. And what I was seeing there is that Vlad Putin, and some of this is a recap, so forgive me as I ramp into the current state of things, but I was seeing that he was really struggling with some sort of dementia. It's what it looked like. Just either Parkinson's dementia or just dementia or some kind, maybe there's lead in the water, in the pipes in Russia. I mean, I'm sort of doubting that Russia has like a environmental protection agency. So, I mean, whatever it was a severe dementia that went to his head. And I also see incredible health problems with Vladimir Putin. And I see internal organ problems like crazy. And I'm seeing medications, and I'm seeing alcohol use, and I'm seeing all of these different things on top of a person who already was a very challenging personality to begin with. I mean, honest to God, if you look at that, that's a pretty challenging person there, okay? So one of the things that I wanted to bring forward is that now, 2 months into this horrible war that's happening, as I look at Vladimir Putin, he's still alive, which is a little surprising, to be honest with you, because there were people within the Kremlin that I saw. There were people within his organization that didn't want to go down this road of potentially picking a fight with NATO or picking a fight with another superpower like the United States, and then them running out of money because, as we know, their military equipment is not exactly up to snuff, and they're running out of personnel and the whole thing. So what I saw was that there was an attempt to maybe just calm Vlad down, or maybe take him out of rotation somehow, maybe not kill the guy, but do something to him that would create a health issue where he could no longer be in charge, so a group had to take over. And it looks like about 3 supporters around Vlad Putin caught wind of this, okay? So whatever the plan was, and I'm not sure what the plan was, but there was a plan I could see if he got a little over the top or started expending too many of Russia's assets or money, because they're pretty broke over there, then they were just going to maybe slow the roll on this a little bit. I've now seen 2 months down the road that whatever plan that was got sidelined, foiled, whatever you want to call it. So now we've got 3 other people that are very close to Vlad Putin who are also sharing in this, I'm going to call it a delusion or dementia or something. Yet now I'm seeing this hopping from one person to another. And maybe it was always there with these people and I just wasn't looking for it. Yet what I'm seeing here is that there is a lot of this mental augmentation over there, and I'm going to call it a dementia, with some people in charge. And so what's bizarre about that is, again, I go back to, well, what would cause that rationally? I'm seeing that prefrontal cortex is affected. And that's our decision-making spot, gang. You know, if we don't have a good head on, literally a good head on our shoulders up front, we lean into the back of our brain, and that's the reptilian brain, and that's the monkey brain, and that's the angry bang somebody's head in with a rock brain. And if you look at the frontal lobe of a psychopath, and you look at the brain scan of a psychopath, that prefrontal cortex, gang, especially if you're looking at a heat detecting device or an activity detecting device, a scan that would detect that, it's yellow and red and orange, and it's got all kinds of colors around the outer front portion of the prefrontal cortex. Okay, that's a normal person processing your everyday stuff. Now, a psychopathic prefrontal cortex, and you can Google scans of all of this, so I highly recommend that you do because it's very interesting. And if you Google the psychopathic prefrontal cortex, where people just stop having a conscience and no longer can stop themselves from doing certain things because their empathy has been jumped or really sidestepped by the brain because of either damage to the brain or just the brain just was never wired that way. If you look at a psychopathic scan, the prefrontal cortex area is really dark. It's like dark, like nothing's happening up there. And there'll be a few little orange or yellow spots kind of more towards the center of the brain. But the outer level of the prefrontal cortex is where we have all our feels and we make decisions about what to do from an emotional and reasoning standpoint. Now, I laid all that out there, again, to pique your interest in looking at brain scans on Google, because I'm a weirdo, but also to let you guys know that when I look into old Vlad, even since 2 months ago, there was never a whole lot of bright activity in that prefrontal cortex, that electromagnetic activity, which is fairly easy to detect if you're somebody who's wired like me. Vlad had a real dark prefrontal cortex, okay? And now it looks even darker. So whatever is going on with this dementia, and that's what I'm going to call it, just seems to be exacerbating itself. And there are, again, 3 advisors around him with varying degrees of, I'll call it a half off prefrontal cortex, like if you had a light switch that was off. So what gets weird about this for me as a reader of energies is that we have a diminished capacity over there amongst the folks who are in charge to feel empathy. Okay. And it's not like Vlad Putin was really the empathy king to begin with. All right. So this is not necessarily a positive thing that we're seeing. And as I continue to look into it, one of the things that is so shocking to me is that there's a lot of people around Vlad and around this group that are kind of scared of him at this point. Like they're not sure what to do with this guy or this group that's protecting him. Even the Kremlin is not quite sure what to do. And there's this narrative over there, and everybody's got their narrative, right? And the Russian narrative is that the West is evil. The West is trying to take everything over. The West is trying to ruin the world. And who knows? Maybe we are. I don't know. Yet that's their narrative. And the reason that Putin went after Ukraine is not because he even necessarily wants it. I mean, he wants it to be part of Russia. He wants to go back to the original USSR. Yet the guy just has this, I'm going to call it a psychopathic need to just kill and to be domineering and to own and to have ownership. And as he gets older and this dementia gets worse, this trait, which I personally consider a psychopathic trait, I'm not sure what an actual psychologist would call it, maybe a sociopathic trait or a narcissistic trait or all of the above. Yet what I'm seeing, gang, is that when I look at this guy's prefrontal cortex, it's playing into the hands of a complete nutter who really has zero emotionality about anything. Now, the other thing, too, is I've looked at recent pictures of Vladimir Putin, and if you look at the guy, even from a couple of years ago, he's real blown up. Like he's got a moon face, his neck is real huge. It's like he's poofed up, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And I know he's an older gentleman, gang, and we all kind of lose our girlish figure as we get older. I understand that. Yet the kind of puffiness that he has is indicative of very specific health issues. And one of the things that that's indicative of is liver failure, of kidney failure. It's indicative of your internal organs just backing up. So you get moon-faced and you just get puffed up because there's no water moving, okay? Another thing that'll cause that is steroid use. So if you're on steroids, you get moon-faced, you blow up, and you act really, really erratically. And a person could take steroids to try to get an autoimmune issue under control, to try to get a chronic condition under control. And I don't really think that Russia probably has the greatest medical care on earth. I'm sure they do for their leaders. Yet, if you look at Putin, he is a pretty gray, weird color, which also means that he doesn't have a lot of oxygen in his system. Plus, he's got this moon face. Look at his collar. That's really where you can see it. He's just blowing up everywhere. And it's no secret that alcohol is a major problem in the Kremlin. And an article came out recently in The Atlantic, really documenting how 1 in every 5 Russian citizens considers themselves an alcoholic. And really, vodka over there, vodka is, as the Atlantic put it, the heroin of that country to get them through this never-ending cycle of socioeconomic and religious and emotional oppression that's really just been rolling since Lenin. It's just been going and going and going, and it just hasn't stopped. So it's no secret that alcohol is a big main player over in Russia. And of course, vodka is the national drink, which, hey, it's going to be the least amount of calories. If you're going to drink a lot of hard liquor, that's the one you're going to want to drink. So I do find all of these components and pieces to the puzzle to be very interesting, especially 2 months after the war in Ukraine. And I'm watching the war on Ukraine, and I'm watching timeline shift, which is why I'm doing this podcast right now. And it's concerning to me because, what are the ethics of getting involved in a war, right? What's concerning to me is that this individual over there no longer has the mental capacity to understand that they need to dial back what they're doing, A, or B, there is a delusion that has sunk into Putin at this point, along with his advisors. And he's gone from I'm going to show the world that this is my country. I'm going to take Ukraine back. It's part of the, USSR. It's part of the Soviet Union, the pre-Russian Republic. I'm going to build it all back together again. And it's the actions of a desperate person. And there is so much desperation and rage in Vladimir Putin right now that also, when I feel into that guy, that also I can feel into major health problems he has. So I think the guy is terminally ill, or he's got a condition that they can't fix and it's just making itself worse. So he's taking steroids for it or something. Yet the problem with that is when you've got a guy who's dying, okay, who's already a nutter, who already has been this chess player. And this is where, when this whole Ukraine thing blew out, I just immediately started reading on Vlad Putin, because this guy, you guys, I think he's a creeper. I'm not a fan. He's a sociopath and an authoritarian. He is a chess player. Okay. Vlad Putin's strength is lining up certain things so that over time he wears out an opponent, or secretly wears out an opponent. None of what he did in Ukraine fits this mold. Okay. Now, apparently Russian intelligence, United States intelligence, all of the intelligence that we got, we knew that they were going to move on Ukraine, but to this extent was kind of a shocker, because it's not really how Putin rolls. Okay. So we're laying all the case pieces out, like pretend we're playing, I don't know, Law and Order or any of those cop shows that my kid watches a ton of. So we're laying out the profile of Putin here. And like Criminal Minds, that was the name of the show. I was trying to think of then that pause. I'm like, what the hell was that show? With Baby Girl and Derek. Okay, Criminal Minds. So as we're laying this out, what you have the opportunity to see is a person who over time and over inclement health and inclement mental health is losing their inhibition in throwing the spaghetti at the wall in taking over Ukraine. Now, the problem is, as we all know, there are massive war crimes going on in Russia, and that's not a secret, and that's not a psychic bit. I mean, we now have, Zelensky talking to the UN and talking about the war crimes and saying, what the hell? Why isn't anybody coming in here and helping? Well, there's a very long, complicated story, and I'm sure you can read it somewhere else, about Ukraine and going to join NATO and then not going to join NATO, and then we're eligible and we're not eligible, and oh no, what are we going to do, and this whole thing. So they're not part of NATO, so of course, if they were part of NATO, all the NATO nations would come in and help them out. Problem is, they're not. So if the United States is over a pickle barrel, hind end up in the sunshine, no sunscreen, bare butt, there's the United States. Because if we go in and help Ukraine directly, we're helping them by giving them arms and by giving them tanks and by giving them all kinds of night vision stuff and ways to go after the attack. However, we're not, I think we were kind of backhandedly giving them some airplanes through Poland that were decommissioned, that weren't technically ours anymore, but they belonged to us at one time. I mean, there's a thing, right? So it's kind of like the United States is sitting here watching this kid just get the crap kicked out of him, but the kid, like in a fight in the schoolyard, and the kid just keeps standing up and just beating the crap out of the bully. And then the bully goes and rests for a minute and then comes back and just beats the bejesus out of the kid. And the kid looks like he's dead on the ground. And pretty soon he pulls himself up and he beats the bully up. And so when he's down on the ground, the United States can't touch the kid, but the United States is standing on the outside of the fight, kind of throwing a few Band-Aids in and some smelling salts and a baseball bat and saying, okay, next time you stand up, use this. So it's really pretty ridiculous. However, I was looking at, and I have to be very careful how I say this, I was snooping in the psychic ethers about, what the United States might be thinking would be a smart or not smart move. And there is an awareness that I see in our top level of government, in our top level of military, in our top level of security and spies and all the things. Every single thing I just told you that I've been looking at psychically, our government knows. okay, about this situation, about Putin, about these main advisors. They know, down to the vodka use, down to the way that vodka, or really any hard alcohol for that matter, if consumed in humongous amounts, alcohol will create a particular health condition that in secular or non-medical circles is called wet brain. And it's really sad. It affects a person's ability to think and reason. Oftentimes it's a type of dementia. And people who will suffer from this condition then will also experience humongous bouts of irrational rage. And really, the disease of alcoholism also comes with a significant amount of abuse, verbal abuse, rage. And every addiction has a particular, spirit that walks with that addiction. And alcohol addiction and alcohol abuse, it's no different. There's a particular spirit that follows that alcohol addiction, and it's dark, and it turns people nasty over time. And also what turns people nasty is that much alcohol really does degrade brain tissue. So anyway, back to the United States, understanding this situation with the people they're dealing with and the Kremlin and this dementia and all the things. And they've got to know whatever this health issue I'm seeing with Putin is, they've got to know that. I think the reason that they haven't shouted out about that in media is that they don't want to spook the guy. The Russian thing is to be very proud. And you don't want to go out there and say, hey, everybody, we're the spies in the United States, and we happen to know that Vlad Putin has a failing liver and he's on a bunch of steroids and he's really weak, because a person of his pathology would freak out and show his strength, okay? And that's somebody who would just whack off a bunch of nuclear missiles into the ethers just to show everybody he still could growl. So that's one of the reasons I'm seeing we're not releasing that information, but I can see that it's out there. So nobody's going to listen to me because I'm a psychic. So it's not like I'm ruining national security secrets here. Yet I would tell you that as this issue goes along, the United States, who's in a very tough spot, is going to be making some really tough choices here, because the level of horror that we're going to be seeing that the Russian military is inflicting on Ukraine is awful, short of Auschwitz concentration camps themselves. There's a lot of walking the line kind of really awful atrocities that are happening in Ukraine. And if you're anybody who pays attention to even the most obtuse vein of news, you're going to know that this is a thing over there. So the problem is, we can't just, as a country, sit over here and, look at Hitler and Nazi Germany and all the genocide and atrocities. We can't very well sit over here and say, never again. But, except for Ukraine, and we're really sorry you're not part of NATO, but never again. But, maybe somebody else will deal with your war crimes, but never again. And it gets to be rough, right? Because we're one country. It's not like we're sitting here being the world police, yet here we're this country making these pledges to help, and we don't even think twice about elongated 20-year wars in Afghanistan and all of this and all of that. And here's a country that's just getting hammered, saying, come on, we'll join NATO tomorrow. Help us out. And the United States isn't the only one in this pickle. We've got the European nations. And we've got European nations that are refusing to boycott, Germany being one of them, the gas, the natural gas that they buy from Russia. And they're refusing to boycott it because that's their source of energy in in Germany. It comes from Russia. And then the rest of the European Union gets a lot of that Russian natural gas. And so there's a lot of frustration even among the European countries that Germany isn't boycotting as much. Well, Germany is not boycotting as much because they're trying to offset complete crap shows in their own country regarding energy collapse. So here's just a little psychic peek into the future, what I'm looking at there. If you've been following my podcast and following my forums and following my blogs and all the things, you're going to remember me writing about natural gas becoming quite a commodity here in the United States. And I had friends years ago that were saying, hey, what should I invest in the stock market? You're a psychic. And I'm like, well, natural gas, it's going to be a thing. And, they kind of came back later and said, well, I don't understand why you'd say that. That's not the most green energy. We're going for other green energy like electrical grids and solar. I don't think we're going to have much natural gas. I'm like, you guys, I'm just telling you, survey says, bing, natural gas is going to come up as a hot property. Well, it kind of makes sense that it would, because we're coming up with technologies now to compress the natural gas in these massive chambers, big tanks, like think giant ass propane tanks. Propane for those of us that live in the mountains. Propane. I don't quite live in the mountains, but I live next to them, about 50 miles. I'm right by them. Propane. So think of like giant, massive tanks of methane gas, okay? And those go over on tankers and, they're able to plug those in and just keep a steady stream going. Well, obviously that's not very efficient and it takes time to get everything from here to there. So just in the same way that they dropped the cabling in the English Channel for communications, we're going to be looking at different ways to get Europe natural gas, because we have so much natural gas coming out of the North American continent that we burn it. We burn it off at oil refineries over here because we're just like, too much methane. What do we do with this crap? I don't know. So we have a ton of it over here, and Europe is getting all of theirs pretty much. It's something ridiculous, like 80% or something really high. And that could be wrong, but it's really high. And they get it from Russia. So anyway, again, psychic stuff here. Yet it's making sense to me now why in 2017, 2016, 2018, I kept seeing natural gas, because really I'm a green energy person, right? You have to know, as a person who loves to lay in bed with insomnia occasionally, I like to try to think about ways that we could create energy and not tax our other environments. And so I'm always trying to come up with all kinds of weirdo alternate energy stuff. Yet, for the time being, natural gas is not the cleanest alternative energy. It's cleaner than burning oil. It's cleaner than burning coal. Yet it's not perfect. Yet again, the European Union is running on it. So we're going to figure out a way to get them more gas. In the meantime, switching back to Russia, we got Putin and his three buddies. We got the four stooges over there. And I'm not even going to try to be nice about it. It's just not okay what's happening in the world. So we've got these individuals, and the United States has intelligence on how ill Putin is. And I think maybe we're just hoping he drops dead or something. I don't know. However, we're talking with other NATO countries. And if Putin steps into a NATO country like Poland or whatever and starts a fight over there, then the fight's going to be on. Yet at this time, there's this awkward position of the United States anyway, not wanting to start World War III. Now, what's interesting about that is actually Putin has technically started it because of this action on Ukraine. And he's not going to, this is the thing, is this guy's health has declined so much. These advisors' health has declined so much. There is a darkness in this individual spiritually that's being fed by the dominion and the crushing of Ukraine and having that old world purpose. Okay, think old world. Putin's part of the energy of the old world. And that authoritarianism, that old world authoritarianism, having that last big roar before you're done. That's kind of what he's doing. And so the point that gets me a little concerned, and I say this just to bring awareness to it so everybody can be a little more cognitive of just the energies out there, and maybe take a personal practice at night to sit on the side of the bed and send some really good energies into the ethers. Because what I'm looking at is a person in Putin who's degraded to the point where he's talking himself into being a hero martyr. Okay. And I sincerely wish I could just call up our military and tell them all this stuff, except when I look at it, they know. They already know. Yet he's really talking himself into being the hero martyr. And so at first it was, well, I don't want to destroy Ukraine entirely because I need it to add it to my arsenal of power. Yet now there just isn't any concern for that. He would rather have a ruined crater called Ukraine that he could say is his, that was non-functional, than not have it at all. And, it doesn't matter what talks they go into. He's not going to stop until he has the opportunity to have the whole thing. Now, the only upswing, and the problem we can have here is that's going to be a person who, kind of like Hitler. Hitler dug himself into a bunker, and as he's losing the war, he really had nowhere to go because they had found Auschwitz. They had found Dachau. The war crimes that were being pinned to this human being were astronomical. So it wasn't really like Adolf Hitler was going to be able to just go back and join the world stage, and he knew that, so he shot his head off in his own bunker. Yet, the saddest part about this is that Putin has gone from being an authoritarian, megalomaniac chess player to more of a sociopathic chess player. He's gone from that person. As I look at him now today, he's gone into more of a psychotic Hitler type. I'd rather take everybody out with me than stop prematurely. So the difficulty there is that's somebody with nuclear capabilities. And Zelensky, because of many countries' help, is getting beaten back, so to speak. And then he's coming back and kicking the butts of the Russians. And the issue there is that Ukraine's spirit is not being broken, and the whole world is standing with Ukraine. So if you can imagine being the crazy, at this point, almost psychotic, I'll just say that because I don't know how else to describe this darkening of the front cranium with this dementia, but that just inability to understand that it's time to call it off and something else needs to happen. He's wasting his people's lives. Putin is wasting every single last rickety Soviet, from the old Soviet days, Russian Federation piece of military equipment. Literally, it's if it wasn't so heinous, it'd be super sad. Okay? If there wasn't so much life that was being lost, this whole thing on Russia's end would be pathetic because their resources are so drained. Now, they're still, where are they getting their money? Well, they're getting their money through crypto. And the Russian Republic had really banked up a lot of crypto because Putin's been preparing for this for a while, and he knew he was going to get cut off from everybody. He's not stupid. Of all the things that man is, stupid isn't one of them. Right now, however, whatever this strange dementia is, it really is impeding his ability to understand that he can't win this. This is not a winnable option because the United States is just going to give Ukraine all kinds of weapons, and so is other countries. We're not the only one giving Ukraine help. And so everybody keeps feeding Ukraine and nobody's feeding Russia. And we're upping the sanctions and all the things. And they just keep laundering money and getting more. So at a certain point, gang, and this is what I really kind of wanted to frame all this up for everybody, because at a certain point, there comes a need to do something more severe about the person who's going to do something severe. And Putin still has some severe actions up his sleeve. And I think we know about them. I think our intelligence in the United States knows about them as I peek in on that. However, you can't really do much about somebody who may fire off a short-range nuclear device, And the rough part of this is when the Russian army went down, they were knocking around Chernobyl. They were trying to crack the dome that there's a hangar that's over the top of the meltdown site at Chernobyl. And I don't know if you ever watched the Chernobyl miniseries. I very, very, very much encourage you to do that because it will really give you an inside look at the way Russia deals with their internalized problems. It's very, very well done. right down to the really ugly 1980s clothing and glasses and haircuts that they put every single one of those actors in. It's really, really well done. But anyway, if you haven't seen it, hop on a streaming service and watch Chernobyl, okay? A couple of years ago, I think it came out in 2018 or 19 or something right around there. And what you'll learn is that reactor melted down and was putting off so much radioactivity that, I mean, you couldn't even get next to it. If you look down into the pit where the reaction was happening and breathed the steam, you were toast. Your face would melt off and you'd die within 4 hours. I mean, it was just way too much radiation. So speeding up to now, there was a very scientifically built, ginormous hangar that was built over the top of Chernobyl because inside of that, it's just eternally radioactive. I mean, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of years, literally, until those isotopes take a chill pill. It's bad, right? And so outside of Chernobyl, there's a non-livable zone there. And the Russian armies, when they went into Ukraine, they had stationed themselves and dug pits because they were fighting. They dug trenches right outside of the area that this massive nuclear meltdown happened in the 80s. Now, you got to understand, gang, for pretty much 100 miles in every direction, it's toast up there. It is just flat toast. And there are soldiers up there digging in the dirt right outside of this gross bunker, hiding, doing whatever war games they're doing. So all of those soldiers, if they're not dead already, are going to be dead soon. And these are the Russian soldiers. Yet there were concerns that the hut, the hangar that covers up the melted down Chernobyl section, that Russia would crack it. And Russia was kind of trying to crack it, gang. Because what better way to poison Ukraine with already existing nuclear poison and not drop a nuke on them? Go for the Chernobyl site. Hope that the winds take all of that. The minute that hut comes off, all of that steam is going to come out. You got to understand, gang, a meltdown, a nuclear meltdown, okay? These nuclear rods don't just melt into a pool and then solidify in the ground. They're so freaking hot that reactor, it's so hot that it burns into the ground. It melts the mantle of the earth, okay? And this happened in Fukushima, the meltdown of Fukushima. The reactor is so hot, it melts the ground below it. And it just keeps melting and melting and melting and melting and melting and melting. And eventually, those reactors are going to hit the core of the earth. And God only knows what's going to happen when that happens. But we've got these reactors that are and these radioactive rods that are melting themselves down through the ground. And that melting process, it throws a lot of steam up through this 10 trillion foot deep hole. And that steam is highly radioactive. So that's what's going on over there. That's what happens in a meltdown. That's why you don't want a meltdown to happen, because it just keeps going technically it might get to the core of the earth. And if the core of the earth can absorb that kind of heat, or if it's hotter than the core of the earth, it might just keep going. And who knows? I'd imagine it gets stuck there gravitationally, but it's just crazy. So when we think about what Putin wants to do, this is why I'm saying things that we can do to offset this sociopathic, really kind of psychopathic at this point, need to annihilate, to be the roaring lion who went from, well, I'm just going to put the USSR together as my last great action as a leader. He's gone from there to, you know what? I'd rather be the leader that took out the West. I will be remembered for being the courageous one who took out the West. So that's kind of where he's at now. Okay. So if all of our day-to-day practices can include some gratitudes, can include some just really heartfelt connections with people, and just trying to get it all worked out and work together within ourselves over here, we can put some love in the ethers. If you're a praying person, just throw some prayers out. You know that there's somebody over in Russia that'll be like, okay, you guys, this has gotten really stupid and we need to dial it back a little bit here. and that they would have the availability as well as the courage to do that. Yet remembering that even though there are crazy people with nuclear codes, there are almost 8 billion people on this planet, and all of us are a broadcasting device. Okay, all of us have a brain. We have an electromagnetic current in our body. This is what keeps our body alive. That's the difference between us and a slab of steak on the counter. So we can go out there with our ability to put peace into the earth, love into the earth, calm into the earth, and that entire wraparound of energy gets pushed off into the quantum field. And when we push all that energy into the quantum field, then we're able, from that perspective, to affect the ethers that press upon others. And, in this podcast, I've talked a whole lot about how even 1,000 people meditating, okay? 1,000 people meditating, say that 10 times real fast, will affect 20,000 because of the exponential energetic effect of peace and of relief. And the human brain is wired to seek relief in a signal, okay? The human brain is not looking to be agitated in terms of brainwaves. That's just not the human brain's thing. It's not looking to be upset or irritated. In fact, the human brain is constantly like a police scanner that's looking for a maximized frequency that it can clock onto. And that's at 7.83 hertz, which is the heartbeat of the planet. Actually, it's what's called the Schumann resonance. So the human brain is not looking to be agitated, because if we speed it up and agitate it, then we create some really, really, really crazy responses and people go nuts in the streets. And one of the rules of war at the Geneva Convention, the rules of war state that you can not have psychoactive weapons that will agitate people's brainwaves. That's a no-no, because that makes everybody go crazy, and you can't just focus it on one group. You can't say, okay, here's my 30 hertz that I'm hitting your brains with, and only the Russians will fall prey to that. No, everybody will have a hard time with it. Pretty soon everybody's just insane because their brains are too agitated. So if you consider the prayer frequency or the Om frequency of Buddhist monks, which is about at 135 hertz, that Om, it'll rattle windows, the Om frequency. The Om frequency also makes the body and mind comfortable. And there's a math thing involved here, which I think is super cool. And the only time I really get involved with math is with music or with physics or with wave science. And I have an acoustic sciences background, so I love all this stuff. But if you look at the cycling of 135 hertz, okay? And what I mean by cycling is how many times that wave pattern is going to go up and then down and cross the sine line, which is the flat, like the horizon. Think of the horizon. And there's a loop up in the sky, and it crosses the horizon of the ocean and goes down into the water and crosses back up to the surface of the water and goes up to the sky. Well, that surface of the water on the horizon there is called the sine line. And every time you have a full wave cycle, which is one full up and sploosh down through the surface and down to the bottom of the ocean, and then plink back up to the surface, not way back up to the sky, but from the surface to the sky to the bottom back to the surface, that's called one wave cycle, right? So when you're talking about the Om frequency cycling at 135 hertz, so that's happening a lot more. It's happening faster than 7.83 hertz, which is happening a lot slower that way. However, if you do the math, that is almost 7.83 hertz, almost fits exactly 17 times into 135 hertz. So it's a wave cycle that the brain can, it's like a division thing, but it's a wave cycle that the brain can break down and say, okay, so the Om frequency is within my hearing, because the human hearing can't hear 7.83 hertz. We can feel it. Our brains can respond to an electromagnetic pulse coming up through the ground from it. However, we're not necessarily going to be able to hear it. So even 135 hertz we can hear. So if you consider that the brain is hearing sound at 135 hertz. That wasn't 135 hertz, but the brain is breaking down those wave impulses in the eardrums in frequency, in pressure waves, okay? So the brain is feeling, in essence, the brain is feeling the same reaction of 7.83 hertz 17 times, okay, in the same arena. And actually, it's not entirely true, because you can get a lot more wave lengths of 135 hertz into the same 1 mile of ocean than you can 7.83 hertz. But the point I'm making is that the human brain can break down the ohm frequency in a way that it fits comfortably in its chemical creating cycle, and it needs that for the 7.83 hertz. So why am I talking about brainwaves so much? Well, it's important here because when we're in a prayer brainwave, when we allow ourselves to get into praying, okay, or meditating, or saying Om, or becoming one with the quantum sphere, or just being part of that quantum fabric, we put out a pulse on that fabric that calms down the brains of anybody that pulse intersects. And as I was mentioning, you have 1,000 people meditating and 20 and 30,000 people are affected by that. It's because as we use our brains as a broadcast mechanism, gang, and they actually are one. Hello, it's not just a telephone. It's not just your cell phone. It's not just a cell tower. Your brain is a broadcast mechanism. I cannot stress this enough. As we get into that place and broadcast on, let's just say, on 135 hertz, Om, the brain not only is going to pick that up, but that tone is going to vibrate in the quantum field, okay? Because the one thing about physics is that it is the same no matter how we apply it. It's the same in this third dimension. In our multiverse, quantum physics works the same way and are broken down the same way across a multitude of space-time and particle and sound and light. A wave is a wave, okay? So a wave is going to augment the quantum field, period. And that quantum fabric runs through the center of everybody's body and brain. So as we are putting out good vibes, as we're putting out positive prayers, as we're putting out singing and happiness, as we're putting out the Om frequency, that goes into the quantum sphere and it begins to neutralize brain chemistry hundreds of miles away, thousands and thousands of miles away, because the quantum field is augmented by our brain broadcaster. Are you following here? So that's what we can do to help out this situation in Ukraine, because this works conversely. When there's a lot of depressive, sad, weird, catastrophic, unbelievable, god-awful things happening in the world, and it's happening and being witnessed as the Ukraine war, as it's being happened and witnessed, and the pain from the witnesses is hitting the quantum sphere, all of that is also hitting the quantum realm. And that despair, that more dense or lower frequency of pain, of suffering, that's coming through all of us as well. So if you've noticed you've been more tired or more irritable, if you've noticed you've cried more, I woke up last night, this is no lie, dead, 3 o'clock, dead on. And that's when we also have a lot of energetic changes on the earth. And people like to say, oh, it's the witching hour. That's when the demons come out to play. And maybe that's sort of true, but the bottom line is it's actually when the electromagnetic system of the earth it kind of goes into rest and then it starts to reboot again. And it's really a reboot period. And so I wake up, because I do that, and I use the restroom, because what else do you do at 3 a.m.? And I come back to bed, and I have the worst anxiety attack on the planet. There's just certain things I can't control right now. And, I've got a podcast hung up in the post-production chain with people out with COVID, with services not being available, with all these things and all the things. Then I've got other things in my world that I'm trying to get coordinated, and it's just some stuff's out of your control. So on a good day, I can just look at this and go, God, that's disappointing, but you know what? You can only do what you can do. Well, last night, something was going on also with our astrology, because I think we've still got the remnants of Saturn, which is the planet that dictates rules, regulations, home, hearth, money, contracts, death, taxes, all those things. Saturn is in direct competition right now with Aries. It's squaring off with Mars, actually, in Aries. And so Mars, the warring planet. So there's a lot of sparks flying in people's organizational periods. And do you have enough done? And are you on top of things? And all these things. So as this kind of rolls through, what I think is so interesting is we've got a pretty big opportunity here to recognize that we all are going to be subject to energies in this quantum realm. I mean, it really doesn't matter what we're doing, but we're all going to feel the augmentations, good, bad, or indifferent. So if we can put something into the ethers that's going to uplift everything that we're working for, that's going to make a huge difference. Again, say a prayer for the earth. Go sit down. If the weather is nice enough in your neck of the woods, sit down with your back against a tree and send beautiful love energy right straight into the earth through the trunk of that tree. You know, I mean, trees are massive conductors of vibration. Trees communicate with each other through these mycelial networks, which are these big, well, if you watch Star Trek, if you watch Star Trek Discovery, you know exactly what a mycelial network is. But they're these big fungus networks and fungus strands that go through the whole entire earth, and they communicate with one another through chemicals. And so if a tree is getting cut down, it starts shoving chemicals through the ground to all the other trees saying, danger, 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 Will Robinson. And it starts letting other trees know that there's something dangerous there. Trees have family groups, they've come to find out, especially conifers. You know, when you've got pine trees, they have huge family groups. And those conifers will send out chemical cues to other trees like, hey man, crap's coming down. Or if there's a fire, this is a documented scientific fact that over a mountainside, if there's a forest fire coming, trees 3 and 4 miles away that are being burned up are cueing the trees forward that there's a fire coming. So there's been documented evidence that the pine trees start trying to blow open their pine cones because they know they're going to die. So they try to blow open their pine cones so that when the heat comes, it can raise the seeds up and take the seeds. And this is happening before the fire even hits them, because the fire will open pine cones too. Yet this literally is something that the pine cones will do because they're getting the cue that the trees are going to die. So trees do communicate with each other. They're very, very sentient. So if you sit there, especially with the pine tree, and you put your back on it and you send good mojo into the earth, that good mojo is not only going to go through that tree and broadcast literally into the air. Trees are also energetic radio towers. But that energy is going to go down into the roots of the tree and go through those bacterial networks and those fungi networks and go through that mycelial network. And literally, that is the shot that's heard around the world. And that's why it's so important that we spend time in nature, because nature is drawing from the pulse of the planet. Trees are huge, huge radio towers for the Schumann resonance for 7.83 hertz. Wood is a vibratory mechanism, right? I mean, you look at a violin, it's made out of wood. Luthiers work with wood with guitars. I have a ton of guitars. They're made out of wood, except for my Ovation, which has a plastic rounded bowl on the back, but the top part of the music resonation portion is wood. So wood is an incredibly resonant substance. So sitting with your back against a tree, I mean, and I know you can get kind of sappy if you sit against a pine tree, but it's all good. It's for the world. It's for the world, man. Put a towel back there if you're really worried about it. And put that good energy into the earth, because that's what we can do right now. You know, I don't care if a person's a Democrat, a Republican, a progressive, a Trumplican. I don't put Trumplicans and Republicans in the same bucket, just like progressives don't oftentimes label themselves as Democrats. If a person doesn't believe in politics, if a person thinks it's all corrupt, I don't care what the political belief system is here. Nobody fares well in a nuclear holocaust. So sending this situation, the good vibes in your brain, in your mind, into the ground, you will help a lot more than you realize, because our United States, NATO as a whole, is really tied down until the UN is willing to call war crimes on Putin. And it really breaks my heart when I look at this, because they're kind of dragging their feet on this one. Everybody's so afraid of old Vlad over there. Old Vlad and his milky, sloshy brain. Everybody's just freaking out that they're going to be the ones to pick the world war with them. Well, the fact is, Vlad already picked the world war. He's been wanting somebody to come in after him for a while. And he's trying to bait people into it. And everybody in world power is very aware of how this guy works. So people aren't stupid. World leaders aren't stupid. They're not rushing in. Yet the UN it's very tragic to me that everybody's so afraid of this guy. Putin, I mean, because, there's that old saying, if somebody's going to cheat on you, they're going to do it anyway. They're a cheater, okay? If somebody's going to start an apocalyptic war, they're going to do it anyway. It's just what they do. It's what they're here to do. So I'm not suggesting it's 100% that he's going to start an apocalyptic war, yet I'll tell you what, the longer this goes on, the more he gets into that, I'm going to go out the martyred guy who actually took down the West in the name of the free world. They see Russia as the free world and us as the oppressors. Everybody's got a lens, right? So that's their viewpoint. And, think about like the United States of America. If everything became this, well, God, gotta keep a hairy eyeball on the U.S. to not have it become this too. But if everything around us became this psychotic Handmaid's Tale authoritarian dictatorship, and we felt like that was pressing in on us, and we felt like pretty much we'd picked a fight with Mexico, and now we were losing that fight, and pretty much it was going to be us against the entire world, which would turn into this authoritarian nightmare. Who knows what the United States would do in that case? Because Russia feels like it's got nothing left to fight for. That's the issue. So like I said, we can counter that by putting the good mojo in the air. I will tell you that the Biden administration appears to have 45, like Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, all the way through. They're making up characters after Plan Z there, through the whole alphabet, to deal with the variances that the Putin government could throw out there. So, and a lot of these, as I look out there, a lot of these plans, of course, involve the European Union, different countries to different degrees, depending on the plan. So the whole world is kind of working on the Putin problem right now, because everybody knows what I'm talking to you about today. Everybody knows that we are 2 clicks from this wackadoodle just saying a big fat cheers with the best vodka on the planet and just punching a nuclear button. I mean, he's getting to that point where the only thing he has left in legacy is what he took down. So I'm seeing a predominant number of timelines here where somebody intervenes, the UN, the NATO, something happens. And also, I do see, looking down the ethers here, a lot of the Russian people deciding that they've had it with this war because of the number of casualties and how it's just hammering the people themselves. So we've not yet begun to see the uprising from the Russian people. They're still kind of stuck in, their own feeding of propaganda over there. And a lot of their news stations have been shut down, and there's not a lot of ways for most of the people in Russia are not for this war, but they can't really do much about it. So we haven't really seen anything erupt from the inside of the country yet, but that's coming. Again, considering, God bless Mother Russia, considering that the statistic is 1 out of every 5 Russian citizens considers themselves an alcoholic. That's a lot of liquid courage over there, you guys, okay? So we're going to just see what happens, yet the Russian people are yet to make a play with all of this. So I think that there's a lot that's still going to happen, yet I thought it was important to to convey to folks what's going on so we can do our part energetically in balancing out world vibrations. Because I believe that if we get in there and focus our energies, we can really turn the tide energetically and not only support Ukraine, yet calm the minds down of those making very violent decisions in Russia. You know, there's almost 8 billion of us on this planet, and that's 4 people making these decisions over there. I mean, there's others too, but there's basically 4 people really throwing down in the Kremlin to get this going. So if we can focus our positive and good energy, then I feel as though we will be able to at least do our part, because we can't affect policy. We can't affect the delicate balance of UN and NATO, and who doesn't want to start World War III with crazy pants over there. So, I mean, it's really a weird situation. But I wanted to tell everybody what's happening so we can get our best selves forward and put that positive energy out there. And please take away from this podcast just that. Please do not take away from this podcast, oh, Danielle said we're going to have an imminent nuclear weaponry war, World War III, because I did not say that, okay? Please don't take away from this podcast, oh God, we're on the verge of nuclear extinction. We're not on the verge. We just do have somebody who actually would blow off a nuke at this time, but we're not on the verge of it. It's just that his mentality towards a nuke has changed. So let's put that good energy out there. Let's send blessings to Ukraine. Let's send blessings to every world government that's trying to deal with this in a way that doesn't agitate a guy with a melted brain over there and a moon face because of his health. So let's just do the best we can to put that high vibration out there, gang, and stay in that sphere, in that ether, not in terms of denial or magical thinking, yet that's literally what we can do that's the most effective. So let's give it a shot, okay? All right, everybody. Well, listen, everybody go find a tree that's going to be your conduit to the mycelial network as well as to the ethers. Go think about what kind of good energy and how you want to put that heart energy into the world. Go for it. I'll be right there with you. And I'll see you next podcast.